So, welcome everybody to the first edition of Speak, Listen, Human Stories. And thank you, Father John Kenny, for being our first victim as such.
Victim?
Yeah. So, and thanks for having us in your home and everything like that. So, real privilege for you to be here. Thank you. So,
you're welcome.
Yeah, so, little story about how Father John and I first met. I think I was thumbing a lift back home to Achill Island in County Mayo, and you were very kind to give me a lift. You may not have been aware at the time, but I was having some real trouble at home. I wasn't in a good place. I was about 17. Let's see, that was probably about 28 years ago, believe it or not. So we were both very young men.
I went to Achill in 1994, so that's about right.
So I think it was about 97, thereabouts.
Okay.
But anyways, you weren't to know, I was having really, really tough stuff going on at home. Mm-hmm. But you were kind of, in that journey and the subsequent times we met a few times, because you were involved with the secondary school I was in at the time. It sort of gave me, a bit of hope that, strangers could be kind, mm-hmm. and that also, priests, nuns, people of the cloth as such, were genuinely compassionate, and could listen, and I could resonate and relate, and, if I listened, I could have some good advice, So I really appreciated that at the time, and I've never thanked you for that. So that's kind of why we're here today, almost 30 years later. So
I wasn't expecting to hear that story.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd surprise you.
You have surprised me. I know one of the reasons, I'd be a bit more hesitant now to take somebody up on a lift, thumbing on the road. Yeah. But back then, I suppose I wasn't too long away from thumbing myself.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, whenever I have a car, I won't pass somebody who's thumbing a lift.
Yeah.
Because the amount of number plates I saw from the back.
Yes.
And people go on the same road, same journey.
Yeah.
And I said, so that was kind of a rule of thumb nearly with me.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting.
But because I was on the other side of that lift, I have the same thing now, which you won't know. So if I'm around Mayo or whatever, I always pick people up as well, because that's how I got around. Yeah. So anyways, I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And, in a way, it was a small part of the journey that, of the bigger journey as such. Mm. But, I have a few questions here for you. And, been thinking about this a long time. But such as, do you think the face of people's faith has changed? We're in County Mayo, but I'm sure it's a similar story all around Ireland. Mm-hmm. So say in the last 20 or 30 years, are people looking for something different from the church, do you think? Or has it separated between, what people need, what people want between younger people and older people? What do you think?
Where to start? I suppose you mentioned 20 or 30 years ago, that would be the time I was in Achill Island.
Yeah.
And I remember being kind of the new kid on the block. And they had been very used to a traditional priest before I arrived on the scene. And here comes a guy on a cycle bicycle, who was into dancing and line dancing and going out and about and so on. So I was a kind of novelty in that regard. So I had a great kind of feeling of welcome, and people appreciated that kind of a different style of priest in their parish. And that continued, I think, for about 6 years I was there, because I was very involved with community and everything to do with, could be football, funerals, school, fundraising, mm-hmm. As well as my pastoral work. And I don't think people treated me as a priest, as more as a person, and I think that's the important part. I wouldn't feel comfortable with, say now, to explain that point, heading to Galway wearing my collar, where I'm not known, mm-hmm. where I'm an outsider, and then they would just see a label, there's a priest, a cleric, a person in a uniform. Mm-hmm. But once I got to know people, so the face of the people, I think there have been a few major turning points. The biggest one, I suppose, was the scandals of the church back, what years are we talking about? The 90s. the cover-ups, which was the next phase of the scandals, and then maybe other cover-ups, and then finally, more recently, of course, COVID, which I don't want to talk about too much.
No. Yeah,
But it was like a knock, another knock, and a whammy. And some people haven't come back from the scandals, some haven't come back from the cover-ups, some haven't come back from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And in each occasion or each time, this is very general now, I would feel people kind of felt, well, we can get on without them. Or they don't feel the connection that they used to have was, well, here I am and life is going okay. I don't need that crutch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that experience anymore. Maybe being a bit negative when I say it that way, but that's my explanation, I think, of how it has happened. COVID, certainly, we're still living with it, and a lot of our engagement with people still is on social media, YouTube, Facebook, church TV. And while these technologies were very helpful during COVID, I think they're not as helpful now. And
do you think something is lost in that physical connection?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hear people, they might ring up, oh, it wasn't working today, Father, someone might say, or there's a funeral coming up, will that be on? Can we watch it even today? I had a phone call again today about an anniversary mass, and people are ringing, rather than going to it physically, being there, they wonder, is it online? And I'm thinking, well, is it because you're living far away, or is it just the convenience of saying, well, I watched it when they meet their friends again? It's not the same. No, they can't substitute for the real presence in that sense.
Yeah. So in that regard, numbers seem to be, would it be fair to say that numbers are
falling off a cliff?
Falling off a cliff.
Yes.
And there's no simple answer to how does that get fixed. But do you think that there's something there I know for myself that I became quite reclusive. So I worked all through COVID. I was just in that industry that our doors were open. But after work, I didn't, you couldn't socialise, everything like that. So this isn't about me, but just for example, it's taken me 4 or 5 years to actually want to not be by myself. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the time. And it changed me, and I'm sure, I could speak for a lot of people when I say...
I can identify with what you're saying. People I would have met very often in different settings, whether it's at mass, at church, at a social occasion, they disappeared. Yeah. And so much so that I'd respect their being uncomfortable, but there comes a point you think, well, we've got over that, haven't we? And some haven't really. I can identify. That's another group of the people who are missing. Yeah. There's the people who were missing because I said, well, that's irrelevant to me anymore. I got on without it for 2 years. Yeah. And there are other people who are still fearful of coming back or being out in social settings, and I'd include mass and liturgies with that as well.
And so would you say that the issue is around connection?
Definitely. And I always had this feeling, connection, there's also the word I put with that is belonging. Over the years I've seen people will say, leaving their home parish, their home area, to go to college, to go to work, to tour. Now, if they leave the belonging that they used to have with their family, their friends, and a tight-knit community, it's hard to regain that or re-establish it or build a new belonging or connection, as you call it, somewhere else. Yeah. That is, it's difficult work.
And that's kind of the changing of faith as well. That belonging or connection has shifted.
Yes. Historically, we'll say with mass immigration, we'll say the Irish going to America or going to Australia, where one of the first things they did was establish churches and schools and places they could stay together and be together. Yeah. Our people now, this is a general kind of comment, that's not part of their plan. unless
priority.
or priorities,
Yeah.
right? They just, well, where's the best social life, or where's the best place to meet other people, or sport, or whatever they're into, apart from work. And I think the people who come back are people who maybe want to have a church ceremony or a marriage. A lot of couples will have civil ceremonies and then maybe come and visit a church and say, well, we'd like to bless what we've decided to do as a couple. And then a family comes along and they might like the sacraments to be part of their life and their spirituality.
Yeah.
But it's in broad numbers. A few years ago, only 2 years ago, and maybe a year before that as well, we did a survey at diocesan level in the west of Ireland, Galway, Mayo, that general region, and it was found maybe 16 to 18% are practicing. That's just the bare facts. So that's what I meant by when I said numbers falling off a cliff. But that's kind of, you don't judge a thing on its quantity, you judge it on its quality. I think the quality has improved. I wouldn't be as a priest now. When I started out first, I'd be using a lot of energy to try to reach out to everybody in every circumstance, in every situation. But if I feel people aren't interested, I can't always find the energy to deal with that, especially if there's apathy involved.
Yeah.
And I might go down the road and discover these people aren't interested in a church or being part of a spiritual community. So if they aren't, the Pope asks us to be evangelical, missionary, go out and reach. But if you're constantly reaching to people who are I kind of concentrate my effort more now on the people who are involved and interested.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. And I feel bad about that sometimes, but then I say, well, I can only do so much.
Yeah. So, like, these hits, as you call them, like...
yes, the hits.
Obviously, they're from completely different sources, completely different, things. We won't get hung up on that. But, like, so many of my friends now, including myself, have failed marriages, for example, relationships with family, parents, siblings, and everything have been, there's a fractious kind of things that have happened, like, and obviously family dynamics can be very, very, very different and so on. But what was I going to say? It's just like, do you think, like, a lot of relationships are failing, like, say, marriage relationships, family relationships are do you think that has any connection to, like, people's faith changing?
Good question. Society in general has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Even secularly speaking and spiritually speaking.
Yeah.
I think with people changing address, changing career, there's a lot of flux and change going on. And sometimes that flux goes smoothly and there's an odd time when there's, adjusting and bereavement of losing a place or losing a friendship. Where people to go then to get the energy and the resilience, for some that might be, unfortunately, alcohol or drugs or something, go down that road. For others it might be, let's try a different faith or religion or practice, that's fine as well.
Or distraction.
Or go into something like a gymnasium or running, or just maybe a little bit extreme, over the top. Moderation is a great word in the church, and for the reason being that I think if people are kind of find security in something that there isn't real security in, they get disappointed and maybe not making the point well. Another element I think of it is commitment in general. People making commitment is difficult. I made a commitment to priesthood that luckily, I can't tell you that next week I'll still have the same amount of commitment in me, but it has stayed with me. But I see others who make commitment, and then for whatever reasons the commitment is hard to keep, and then the option is to change your commitments or to leave that commitment behind. So that mightn't have been the case. I'd say 20 years ago it was harder to make a break of a commitment, but not as hard as it is now, or as easy as it is now. Where that might be, you know, every time you go into a shop to buy something, have you a loyalty card? You know, maybe people aren't as loyal to the way they live their lives. You know, they want variety and they want to move on and move to the next thing. And whereas in my own generation, my parents, they made a commitment, they stayed with the commitment through thick or thin or bad, and that brings its problems too. I mean, you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like there's so many things that just seem to have changed in the in the mindset and the like people's presence in like what they do and the relationships they have. So like it's just
well, that's very evident in social media. I mean, everyone produces a persona to go with their social media, whether that's Instagram or all the rest, Snapchats and all the rest, Facebooks. And they talk about how real is it, you know, and I don't know that it is very real.
You're dead right. There's plenty of people I know, and you'd think they were having the absolute time of their lives from their social media.
Correct.
I find it's the people that don't post that are probably the happiest.
happiest,
you know,
well, the house of cards that tumbles down. Yeah. I don't know what happens when. America just there, so the news breaking, they won't be able to use TikTok soon. That's it. There's people whose lives are completely built around TikTok over there. And incomes, and what are they going to do, or how are they going to cope with that?
Well,
like
maybe
if I had no social media tomorrow, I'd just get on with life. But but I could imagine there are people who couldn't get on without it, and you know, even to take a break from it is a big deal. They're living in that whatever world. And AI, wow, I don't know where that's going to bring us.
Yeah, I know. Like, so, would you say that you've had like your own challenges, you know, with commitment, and you know the way things were versus the way where things we perceive them to be going?
I would say I was very affected by the scandals of the church. And I kind of got over that through that and thinking about the humanity and the weakness of people and so on. But when the cover-ups happened, that was really tested my commitment to staying as a priest. Thinking, how can I be associated with an organisation that was willing, first of all, to excuse and move around a problem and help deal with it, but not deal with it. And then further to that, to cover up. It was a real test, but I got over it, I suppose. I couldn't put years on it or so on, because I kind of concentrated on my own work and my vocation, and found that I suppose, took refuge in the parish situation I was living in and working in, rather than taking the big picture and looking and saying, well, do I want to be, do I want to continue my vocation as a priest? But it really did dent and damage it, So what's
the glue? What drives
the glue are people.
Oh,
and the variety of life. Every day there's some good happens. There are days maybe that no good happens, you might think, but even the days when there's no good, something does happen. I came across something recently and I thought it was very true. A man who said that in every bad situation, you'll always find some good if you look for it. So we'll say the catastrophe of war, UNICEF are out there doing stuff. The catastrophe of fire, neighbours are helping each other. The catastrophe of the big things that happen and go wrong.
There's always had the helpers, isn't there?
There's always a helper, there's always somebody there. So there's a good that comes out in people. And if we were to give in to all that's negative and bad, I suppose we would pack it all off and say, to heck with this.
Definitely.
We're a game of soldiers. Sorry, that's not the right phrase to use. But
maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
And like, so going forward, so for yourself and only for yourself, in your vocation, you know. So, like, how do you see yourself connect? Is it part of your agenda to get more people in, or is it to help more people, engage more people, or is it more about the quality of the people who are there?
I was a great advocate, still am, to meet people where they're at rather than bring them where I'm at. That's the first point I'd make about that. So when I was a priest early on in my career or my vocation, I would go to discos and stuff. I wouldn't do that now. But that was because I was that age group myself that I could go out to a nightclub or disco. And people kind of pulled back and said, well, what are you doing here, kind of thing. But the beauty of it was that people found I was approachable, that I wasn't just someone you meet in the church saying prayers and saying mass. So that has always stayed with me. So I would still meet people where they're at, would it be at the side of a football pitch or in the hospital or all the other settings, not just in ritual and religion. Schools I find hugely energetic for me. Not that the kids are all coming to mass saying their prayers, but I have that freedom to visit, and I find visiting a classroom, in a way you're visiting the homes of all those that you're meeting in the classroom, particularly true of national school. And not maybe so much as secondary
They're a bit more honest.
Yeah. But they're direct and honest, and I feel like because I physically couldn't get around to everyone and everything and everyone. When I was here as a priest before, just maybe going off the point a bit, and there were 6 of us working together. Now it's just one, and at the deanery we support each other. But effectively, the town has just one priest where there used to be 6.
Wow, yeah.
So you can only do as much.
And there's more people now.
There's more people.
Yeah.
No, they're not involved. We don't have station mass, neighbourhood mass. We had lots of stuff going on when we had lots of priests working here. So the quality of how I reach out to people might be diluted a bit, but I still feel I'm very approachable, available as I can be.
Yeah.
And a lot of that time is spent with illness and bereavement, which brings me down a lot, dealing with that constantly. It might be a week like last week, 3 funerals. It's hard to see the positive and the uplift. But this weekend is baptisms, and I know I'll get a kick out of that. And next week or a week after, I'll be meeting a couple preparing for their marriage. So there's, there's rises and falls along the way, and I keep at it. I feel I'm a people person. I get on with people. I try at least, and that's what keeps me going.
And what do you do for fun?
Fun? I don't know if you can see a little picture there at the back of me. A lady dancing with me. That's actually from a club we set up here in town nearly 25 years ago.
Oh wow! Yeah.
That's the club, and we set it up. A few of us set it up together because there were so many immigrants working in the neighbourhood from Brazil. And we thought it would be nothing to do with religion now. This was just growing up. My mum and dad, more so my dad and my godfather, which would be my mum's brother, my uncle. They helped to run a dance hall, and music and dance was always part of my growing up. My sister taught me how to dance. She got fed up dancing with the shirt and sleeves on the back of a chair. So she taught me and my 2 brothers how to dance, and I suppose I was, dare I say it, the best of them. That was the reason I mention that is because it's something that stayed with me. Meeting people in the discos earlier on, but mostly wedding receptions and occasions like that. People appreciate to see a priest outside of the role, all that they kind of expect you to be in all the time. And then this club we set up was a great. It brought their community together. It was tiring though, because I remember Friday we'd have a class, but we'd also occasionally have a night just for dancing. No class, no nothing. And those nights, the Brazilians would come in very late because they worked so late, and they came great distances. And when the Irish guys locally would be ready to go home, it would just get a new energy and a new lift, and that always stayed with me. But so that club still goes on. That's one thing I do. And Achill, I used to do line dancing and whatever, set dancing, and
everyone did.
Everyone did, yeah. Social dancing.
If you didn't want to, you still had to. Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to weddings, someone would be asking you, what was the food like? I'd be saying, well, what's the band like?
Yeah.
The other thing I do a lot of is cycling. Cheating a little bit now because I have an e-bike. But it helps me to get out and about, and I use it for transport to and from schools and other things. But it's also a way to get out into the country in a way, and an hour cycling on an e-bike brings you a fair distance.
It does.
And the third thing I do a lot of in the summer months, from April, Easter to autumn, would be paddleboarding. I used to do surfing when I was in Achill.
I remember that back in the 90s. Yeah.
Maybe you had a board on top of the roof.
You did.
Time?
You did I? on your silver.
I had a swell board.
Yeah.
It was the first board I ever bought. It was down there in the Outdoor Pursuits. Tim Daly, he's retired now.
Yeah.
Tim sold me a board, and maybe it was on the card when I gave you that lift. But paddleboarding I took up then because one of my appointments was in Leenane, and there's no waves.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lovely Killary fjord, and a friend of mine, myself and a guy, we did a sponsored paddleboard in there. I just learned how to paddleboard from YouTube, and then took up the sport and continued it ever since, and teach it a little bit too in the summer. Give people a go on my own board, or I have a couple of boards now that I use. Last summer wasn't such a good summer. The weather wasn't hectic, but I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I can already feel it in the air. The longer evenings, especially April, May, particularly May and June.
Yeah.
So
Great.
that's the sporty stuff, and then I have close friends I visit a lot and keep contacts going. And home.
Yeah.
Home is a great. My brother is still in the home area, and my sister-in-law and niece and nephews, I should say.
Where's that?
Turin, where a famous devil appeared at a dance hall near Ballyhonus.
Oh yeah.
It's about an hour from here.
Yeah.
Don't get home as often as I used to because mum and dad are gone.
Yeah.
And but it's always nice to have that link with cousins and aunts, but they're getting fewer and fewer. Some of them are passing on.
Yeah.
But I still have that link where I feel I can say Rolang, or where I started out. Roots are good to have.
Yeah. Great. Well, the only other question I have really is, say in the next few years, here in your parish, what changes would you like to see happen?
What changes?
If you had a, dare I say, some sort of magic wand, what would you like to manifest?
I love people. There's a great team spirit here anyway. As a town, I have to be complimentary of the location where I live now again. As a town and a community, it has a feel for people to come and feel a welcoming feel. There's a lot of variety.
Yeah.
I hate to use that word blow-in. I'm a blow-in. But there are so many people who have made this their home, this town. And there's a great variety.
From everywhere.
So that's the first thing, and it's good to see that. As a parish community, it's always a struggle to keep getting energy, enthusiasm, volunteers, help to keep everything going. You might say the show on the road. But I feel there's a core group, a strong core group who are helping to do that and making the things happen. And I hope they can continue. But as people have to step back or step down or retire from being voluntary or their work, it's important to encourage, and it's sometimes difficult to get other people to step up to the plate, as they say. So I'd love to have a knack or a wand to be able to do that, to kind of make people think, I want to be part of that, and get them involved. The people who are on board and helping are a great team, but all of us are getting older. So
just to have a bit, in other words, to have a bit, the community, tap into the community spirit that's already there.
Yeah, and keep it going.
And keep it diverse.
Remind people.
Yeah,
it's a common effort. It's a group effort. Our Pope Francis has promoted this idea of synodality. Now, this is a technical word, but it basically means journeying together. And he had 2 major gatherings of people from all over the world in the last 2 autumns. The second one was recently. And the huge difference between that gathering and any other gathering that they had in recent years, I would say the Vatican II and other big occasions, was the first point was the way people sat. There was no hierarchy. Hierarchy were present, but everyone sat in a circle. And lay, religious, and priests, and so on. So it's a whole way of kind of approaching being church in a new way. Nothing dramatically different, but showing greater respect for the dignity and the input of everyone. Slow process, difficult process. Some people might find it, what are you doing, what's a waste of time? But the more we take it on as a process, the more I think it'll generate new people and members to come and take part. Feel they can be part of this. It's not them and us, it's us and we.
Yeah.
That's a whole, we could spend a whole...
Well, you certainly changed my mind back in 1996, 97.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would say to, you know, hypothetically, if you were to pick up a teenager like me now,
Wow.
you know, and...
gosh.
don't have to be particularly profound, just, you know...
Just
is there a message that you would give to, you know, the distractions that face young people at the moment?
Where to start? I'd love for young people to have their own experience of Jesus. They're getting a little bit maybe evangelical here. The great thing about his approach to people was, I'll give an example. When he met young people, children especially, the apostles said, keep back, leave him alone, he's busy, you know, that kind of way, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, stop what you're, let them, leave them alone, let them come to me.
Yeah.
And he showed respect and dignity and invited them and involved them.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just children, that was everyone.
Yeah.
But the gospel picks up the story as children. So I'd like people to feel that. And the danger, I think, for young people in one regard in terms of their experience of church is they experience church through the sacraments only. First communion, first confession, confirmation, and then confirmation becomes an exit. Instead of growing into the church and being more involved in church.
I never thought of it like that.
They leave.
They leave.
And that's and that leaving though tends to happen when they're teenagers and rebellious and trying to be cool and do their own thing and hate uniforms but wear all kinds of uniforms. You know, I think if they could get past that rebellion and realise, he's here for you as well. Jesus is still here. Yeah. You can still reconnect and
there's
be
something
connected.
Pure there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
But that's a bit vague. I don't know how to put shape on it.
I don't think it's vague. I think it's broad.
Broad. It is broad, and it takes a. I couldn't do it on my own.
See, now I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
But when I was 17, I'd be like, what?
What's the other about?
But it's making the you know, making the person take a step back from the perception and just feeling something, I suppose. And I guess.
And moving on and through it. I mean, we grow up physically, mentally, socially.
Yeah.
You have to grow up spiritually and religiously as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's taken me 30 years to even scratch the surface, I suppose. So, you know,
keep scratching.
keep scratching. All right.
Yeah.
So, Father John Kenny, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
You have a little prayer prepared.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, as it happens, this year is 2025, and when I was in Achill, when I left Achill, I left in the year 2000, and it was a Jubilee year.
Yeah.
And our Pope Francis has encouraged Jubilee years in his and the previous Pope as well. And this goes back to the Old Testament, the Jubilee year. Cancel deaths, cancel wars, ceasefires, how appropriate. We're getting one again, hopefully, in the Holy Land. But this year's Jubilee is called Pilgrims of Hope. And my own vision of promoting that theme is to do with Croagh Patrick. We have a wonderful pilgrimage here. So I kind of composed a prayer and promoting the whole idea of visiting that mountain, not just for exercise and climb up and run up and obstacle course kind of thing, to visit it spiritually, not necessarily getting down on your knees or taking off your shoes or doing all kinds of penance and hard on yourself, but just to journey with it and be there and enjoy it and experience it. So the Pilgrim's Prayer, as Pilgrims of Hope in the Jubilee year 2025, may we walk with faith, hope and love, illuminate our path, inspire our hearts, and strengthen our resolve to spread your compassion and kindness. Help us to take each step as we journey towards a brighter tomorrow. The last part of the prayer is a quote for St. Patrick. Christ be with us. Amen.
Amen. Father John, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Speak, Listen, Human Stories. Do give us a comment, like, subscribe, share, And all our contact information and all the platforms are in the description. So thank you very much, and we'll see you for our next video very soon. Thank
God
you, John.
bless you all. Slán.
Thank you.